Welcome to the virtual field day for the Baskett Wildlife Research and Education Center. My name is Ben Knapp and I'm the superintendent here at Baskett. And this first presentation is going to give you an overview of what we do here at Baskett and the facilities that we have on site. The Baskett Center is located near Ashland, Missouri, which is about 20 minutes from the Columbia campus of the University of Missouri. The property is a little over 2,000 acres and it's mostly forested, and it's used heavily by the School of Natural Resources for natural resource education, research, and outreach. So with this presentation today, we're going to look at the property, some of the facilities on the site, and talk about the research, teaching, and outreach opportunities that we do here at Baskett. The history of the Baskett Center association with the University of Missouri goes back to the 1930s. Prior to that time, the area was a series of subsistence farms where there are 17 farms within the footprint that is now Baskett. The farms were pulled together under federal ownership, but entered into an agreement with the University of Missouri where the university would manage the area with the objectives of maintaining a wildlife refuge, an arboretum, and also conducting experiments to learn more about natural resources, zoology, and game management. At the time of the 1930s, the CCC had put in a lake on the property as well as built a stone house, and those are still here today. From the 1930s through 1960, the property was owned by the federal government. But then in 1960, the property was officially transferred to University of Missouri ownership and has been owned by the university ever since. The property was originally called the Ashland Wildlife Area, but was named after Thomas S. Baskett in 1988. Baskett was the leader of the Missouri Cooperative Fish and Wildlife Research Unit of the U.S. Geological Survey, and he was a faculty member in S&R. He was superintendent of the Baskett Center from 1948 through 1968, and then again in the 1970s. The dedication of the property to the University of Missouri occurred in 1938 and included a speech by Aldo Leopold, who's one of the very well-known founders of conservation and wildlife management in the United States. Evidence of the site's history can be seen across the property today, and we have some studies going on right now that look at the effects of previous agriculture and the settlement that occurred prior to becoming the University of Missouri Baskett Research and Wildlife Area. So we're taking a quick stop at one of the home sites on the property, and there's usually some indicators of a home site when you see one of these and come across it at the Baskett Center. So a lot of our upland areas are dominated by white oak forests, where we have large mature white oak trees. In some of the home site areas, because of the human influence, we see different species composition in the forests. Very commonly we see ash trees, like we have right here, ash trees and black walnuts, as well as sugar maples, which we also have occurring on this site, are very common on these old home sites. We also typically see these on flat areas, and so where there's a lot of sloping topography around the home site, the home itself would be on a pretty flat area. And a lot of times the ground plants or the understory is different as well, where here we have a lot of wood oats, and sometimes we see flowers like daisies or daffodils, as well as yucca and some other indicators of those home sites. There may be some structures as well, including rock foundations or wells that we see at these locations, and give us an indication of some of the past land use. At this site we have some remnants of an old vehicle that's piled up and still here on the property itself. Aside from understanding the history of the property, we're also interested in looking at how some of that past human land use has affected what we see today in terms of natural resources. So we know that old home sites and farming practices can have a big effect on what we see with current forests and forest succession. And we'll touch on that a little bit more in a later part of this video, talking about restoration. Another legacy of past land use on the property would be places where people had planted trees, established plantations for different reasons. And right around that time where MU came into management of the property, so around 1940, there are a number of different tree plantations established across the Baskett area. And so here we're in a shortleaf pine plantation. And so these stems are all pine trees, which shortleaf is actually not native to this part of Missouri, although it is native as a pine in the state of Missouri. It typically occurs further south. But this plantation was established right around that 1940 period. Across the property there are plantations of oaks, red oaks and white oaks, as well as species that we don't find here very often, like tulip poplar, sweet gum, pines such as pitch pine, jack pine, Virginia pine. So we have a very interesting group of plantations where we can study or learn about how these species grow. We're going to age one of these trees by coring it and looking at the rings, just so we can confirm that these were planted around the 1940s. And this is a tool we use quite often for reconstructing the way forests grow, how succession works, and when trees get established. This is an excellent tree core where we can look at the rings very clearly, and in this portion we see we hit the very center of the tree. And then from there, as we move outward, we can see the rings. They go all the way out to the bark. Now if we were wanting to age this and get a precise count, we would sand this to where we could see a very polished finish and be able to see rings very clearly, and we'd use a microscope and some techniques so we could confirm the calendar years associated with each ring. But just doing a rough count here, I counted 74 rings here. So this tree is approximately 74 years old, which would put us back to 1946 for establishment of this plantation. We also have a lot of recreational opportunities at the Baskett Center. And here we're at Ashland Lake, which is the lake that was created by damming this Brushy Creek feature in the 1930s. And this lake is used for fishing by the community. There's a boat ramp and people fish this lake quite regularly. We also have hiking opportunities at Baskett. People enjoy mushroom hunting on the property and walking their dogs. And there is a Forest Service trail that goes through a portion of the property in the Cedar Creek Ranger District. The Baskett Center addresses teaching needs within the college and the School of Natural Resources by serving as a living laboratory, an outdoor site where students can get their hands on a lot of different experiences and learn through experiential learning. Each year, over a dozen courses use the Baskett Center. Courses that range from soils, where students can look at soil pits and do soil sampling, to wildlife techniques, where students are able to trap some of the animals on the site and look at how to handle them and take measurements on those animals. As well as forest ecology, courses that look at the way that the ecosystems develop and function, silviculture, where we look at the management of those forests, and also a prescribed fire or a burning class. We try to provide students with experiences that train them for their careers in those different positions. And included in that, we offer a red card certification with the fire class. With this opportunity, students can get their entry-level wildland firefighter certification that works with federal agencies and applies in most state agencies as well. We do this through a partnership with the Missouri Department of Conservation, where we come out and on the Baskett property, we have areas that we've designated as burn units, and with students we can come out and conduct safe prescribed fires where students get hands-on experience and really work through the entire process from the start to finish of a prescribed burn. A lot of the projects and work that we have at the Baskett Center provide excellent opportunities for outreach. And we'll host groups at the site. We commonly will have Boy Scout groups who want to come in and learn about natural resource management. The state FFA is hosted at the Baskett Center for the forestry competition, and we'll bring out some of the community to learn about some of the different projects that we work with. One of the very fun projects that we do each year in the springtime is we make maple syrup from some of the sugar maple trees that we have on the site. Making maple syrup in Missouri is relatively uncommon and typically done as a hobby activity or on a small scale, where some could be sold at farmers markets and things of that nature. Here at Baskett, we tap about 200 maple trees every year and work with faculty and students and staff to have an opportunity to come out, learn how to do the process, and get to know each other a little bit better. So each year we'll make somewhere between 10 and 20 gallons of maple syrup that we have available for the volunteers, and also can sell on a small basis to return to the project for future funds. For a lot of the projects that we do at the Baskett Center, we try to integrate the teaching opportunities and learning opportunities for our students with research projects that we can develop and then potentially publish on and get out to learn some new information. And the Burn program that we have is an example of that. So this Burn program represents a study where we actually are looking at varying frequencies of using prescribed fire. So we have treatments or areas that we burn every year, areas that we burn every 2 years, areas we burn every 5 years, and then areas that are not burned at all. And each one of those frequencies we combine with the burn season. So either burning in the fall or burning in the spring. So what this creates is a network of small plots, and they're about an acre in size, and each plot gets a different one of these treatments, which we have replicated on the property. We can conduct these burns, giving students hands-on experience, while also creating, through time, demonstration sites and a research structure where we can look at the effects of fire frequency and fire season on the development of those ecosystems. These areas are typically old fields or places where we're seeing forest succession occur, and we know that fire can be a good tool to keep out some of the woody invasive species and use fire to maintain more of a prairie or a grassland type of ecosystem. We have several other projects at the site as well. And with some of these other research projects, we work with students, often undergrads, on internships or undergraduate learning experiences embedded within some of these research projects. One of these projects is a series of long-term forest monitoring plots that we have across the property. These were established in 1968 by a scientist named John Rochow. So we call these the Rochow plots. With this network of plots, we measure forest structure and composition and are able to look at how that changes through time. We did a recent measurement in 2016 and published a paper on that. One of the other videos in the virtual field day will present some of the results that we've learned from that study and look at how these forests have changed across time from 1960s through present. A third study that we have ongoing that we've worked with students about relates to what we talked about earlier with legacies of past land use. So we can use the 1939 aerial photo of the property to look at what had previously been cleared for agriculture and what had been forested in 1939. Using this, we've established different plots in those conditions. And we've also coupled that with different soil types. And so we have 2 different soil types and then the associated historical forest condition and historical agriculture condition. We've established sampling plots across those different conditions, and we can look at the current forest composition and structure. With these plots, we've worked with students who are quantifying the abundance of invasive species, quantifying the use by wildlife with camera traps, and also looking at the forest development and some soil properties. We have another video that focuses on these restoration plots, and you can learn more about what we found with that work. Finally, probably the largest research project that we have ongoing on the site is what we call the Moflux Tower. And at this research site, we have an eddy covariance tower that's collecting data that's looking at ecosystem processes and exchanges of gases in the atmosphere and the forest canopy, and measuring things from forest canopy all the way into the soil. We have another video in our virtual field day that focuses on the tower, where you can learn about those measurements and some of the exciting science going on there. So that wraps up our overview tour of the Baskett Wildlife Research and Education Center, where we got a little bit of a glimpse of some of the projects and programs that we have out here. I thank you for taking the time to join us on this tour, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the videos and presentations in the virtual field day. Thank you.